Okay, so for the first four questions, everybody kind of messed up on, and I can understand. Again, that's why I reduced the point value and added some more to the actual map portion. But I wanted to pose this to you as more of a challenge to kind of see what you could do with the data. And again, that's why I'm looking at this as more of a test. And you may say, well, that's not fair. You're setting us up for failure, and that's not necessarily true. And I'll show you what I mean. You can get this information just by looking at the data in the tables. And if you had correctly labeled all your regions and you knew that these two territories are in the same region, for example, we'll start with number 4. So without there's easier ways to do this. Like there's really simple ways to answer this question, but I wanted to kind of demonstrate how difficult it is and the workarounds that you could use to get the answers to these questions using only the knowledge that you have so far. Well, you can go to the table, and that's where your population data is for these first 4 questions. But it's not tied to any regions. All you have is the community name. So if you were to open your region table, well, there you've got your regions right here. So if I were to say, okay, I want to know, that's all of region 4. That's all I got for region 4, those two. Okay, so those are highlighted now. And you can go in, now that you've got those highlighted, and go back to your settlement tab and say, okay, well, I know I need this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. I didn't get Midton. Come on. There we go. Okay. So all I'm doing is just manually selecting using the select features tool all of the cities or communities that are in region 4. And when I go down and select only show the selected records, I can just right click on population and there's the statistics tool, can say that. That gives you the average population. And you can look at different values, you can look at the average number of depots if you want to. But the question was for population. So the answer to number 20, or the answer to number 4 would be 2,142 and a half. And that is what I had for region number 4. And that's what you would do for each region. So again, I wanted to show that. I was hoping maybe too much that you guys might have picked up on the different ways to pull things together, as in, you know how to select features, you know how to do that, and selecting more than one. You know how to manipulate data in the table really simply, just so far as, okay, well, I only want to see what I have selected, and I only want to have certain regions selected. So maybe that was a little too much. That's why I adjusted the score. But that's one way that you could have done that. I'll show better, easier ways to do that with maybe some fewer steps, and hopefully to make sure that you get everything in case you were to miss it with your clicking, or if something was really small, like the East Village or whatever town this is up here, the Industrial District 1. Because sometimes it's easy to miss features like that, and there are ways to get around it. But in general, I was hoping that you would just go select your regions and then manually pick up all the information in there, which is one way to do it. If you're not really familiar and you're a beginner with the software, you can still get this information from these tables just by knowing the basics of ArcGIS or any GIS system. Now, the next questions are which settlement has the highest and next highest populations, and that one is pretty simple. You just select population and sort descending, and you got the top 2 right here, the Central Depot and Residential District 2. I think everybody got that one. Most of you guys did really good on that one. The 2 main types of data used in geographic information systems, that was in your book in the first 2 chapters of reading where we didn't have any exercise, and I mentioned it too on my videos. It's raster and vector, and everything that we've been working with in this assignment, this test, is vector, because we've got our points, lines, polygons. That's all vector data. If we had had any grids or really large areas of blocks that had values assigned to them, that's what the raster data is. And there you can get technical and break down a lot of different data. You can technically bring in an Excel table, which would not really be raster data or vector data, But from a geographic perspective and from just a general GIS perspective, everything you see here is vector data. And we'll get into some examples of raster data. We haven't worked with any yet, but we will for our projects and our tests, that is. I think you've actually had one in one of the assignments, but not for this test. We're just working with vector data so far. I think everybody did pretty well here with which settlements have more than 1,000 people and more than 6 depots. Again, you wouldn't even have to know anything fancy. You could go into the settlements table and you could just manually pick that out. You could look, okay, just go down the list. And that's kind of a tedious way to do it, but you still can. What I would prefer is I believe this was chapter 8 for the querying part. You could have come into settlements and selected where population is greater than, get unique values. You can either type it in yourself, or since it's there, you can select it. But the other stipulation was that you also had to have more than 6 depots. So you would use the AND operator, go to depots, you could get unique values, and you have to have 6 isn't in there, so you gotta type it in. So you could say greater than 6. And when you hit apply, it automatically selects those for you. And you did have an example like this in your book, and I tried to kind of give you a hint in my video. So this is just one way you could do it. Okay, I wanted to show that it's there, and it's very handy to know that Boolean type logic. You don't have to know a lot of programming, but that's pretty simple. It's a really simple example. But if you didn't want to do that, it's like, oh, I didn't take a logic class and I don't want to bother with it. You could still just look at the table and get this information. And as for the map part, I think you guys did really well overall. It was worth 61 points total, and essentially I just kind of went through and did nitpicky things that we're going to work on as we go forward. But I'm actually really pleased, and I think that now I'm going to start adjusting the assignments to kind of be more personal and start working with this data as opposed to you just going through the motions and doing these exercises in the book and turning them in. I think that you guys will retain the information better, and it might click a little easier to use a generic phrase for learning. But I'm hoping that by using things that you're going to have to manipulate data that's not from your text and that's not spoon-fed to you, that these skills are going to kind of get sharpened a little quicker, and that they are going to become clearer to you in the long run. So if anybody has any questions about this test, again, don't think of it as the end of the world. It's just a temperature gauge to see how we're doing, and we're going to move forward. That's why we have the assignments too, to kind of cushion your grade, and that's also why I make the final project the biggest part, because that's really what your grade should be based on, is, you know, did I do a good job as your instructor trying to get you to utilize the software, or did you guys pick up on all the skills? So it shouldn't just be, well, you didn't do good on one test, so you're shot in the foot. That's definitely not the case. I'm going to post your assignment for next week, probably Sunday evening, because I want you to work through chapters 9 and 10 this week, and then we'll work through 11 and do some other stuff next week. But if anybody has any questions, just let me know.